I think there's a lot of exciting times ahead for marketing. I think marketing technology still has a lot of a way to go to develop, to create the kind of ROI and also, frankly, just to be easy to use.
A shift as global CEO for an established agency like Ogilvy PR with thousands of employees to building and leading a skeleton team at one of the fastest growing food brands around is not an easy task. Learning to scale that team while finding new ways to educate your target consumer in a fun way is also not an easy task. Welcome back to Marketing Trends. I'm your host, Jeremy Bergeron, and today we're going to hear from Stuart Smith, the Chief Marketing Officer of Caulipower. We'll hear about his marketing journey where he educated people about a new type of product and leaned into influencer marketing in a big way with incredible talent like Dan Levy. Honestly, this is a great company. Their pizzas and crusts are amazing. I'm just going to say that. My producer, Dustin, and I literally went out after this episode to go buy pizzas for our family because Caulipower is legit. I think you're going to love this episode. Let me know what you think. I know I will. Before we dive into this conversation, I wanted to say thank you to our partners at Salesforce. We bring marketing and engagement together. Learn more at salesforce.com/marketing. Now let's get into it. I just got to say, so Stephanie, the co-founder of our business, interviewed the founder of Caulipower, I guess a few weeks ago, and she said that was an amazing conversation. And then, of course, we had the opportunity to somehow loop you into the mix. And as I got a chance to look into your background, you're a legend in the game, man. A legend in the game. In terms of the experience in marketing and PR and advertising in that world and the places you've worked at, I already know a lot about, I think, a bit about your perspective, just given the nature of your responsibility and the things you were doing. And now you're devoted in this Caulipower mission, which I find super interesting, given all the things you've done. I'm honored to connect with you, and I'm glad we could make this happen. This is really exciting for us.
I'm honored too. I don't often do this kind of stuff, to be honest. I tend to try and make other people and other brands famous rather than sort of push myself forward. So take me gently through the process.
First question is, 72% of marketers say that meeting customer expectations is more difficult than it was a year ago. How has this played out for you at Caulipower? And what is your team doing to tackle this seemingly consistent challenge of rising customer expectations?
It's really interesting. The pandemic has obviously changed everything. We're still going to have to reference that from a marketing context, I think, for another year or two to come, particularly in comparative data and a whole bunch of things. But consumer expectations, meeting those at the moment is like, can you actually make the product? Can you get it onto a shelf? And also battling with the problems that a lot of brands are having with retailers, where retailers are trying to simplify the supply chain. And actually that's reducing the number of SKUs that can go on shelf, and it's reducing consumer experience. Consumers are seeing some of their favorite products or flavors sort of disappearing, probably because the velocities are in the lower quartile. There's a lot of rationalization happening within, I think, retail, particularly within CPG and food.
It's interesting. We were just talking with Avery Dennison SmartTrack, their head of communications and marketing, and she was talking about some of the retail game in terms of these RFID, digital IDs they're able to put on clothing now to track supply chain all the way from manufacturer to consumer, and what that's going to do for the experience there. And that whole world's getting shooken up, as you know, especially when it comes to the CPG side of things. Another question for you. 90% of marketers say the pandemic changed their digital engagement strategy. What are some of the new strategies and just high-level tactics that maybe your team adopted over the past year and a half?
Well, this will probably come back as a topic throughout our conversation, but we're different because we're a frozen brand. So the D2C game for a frozen brand is difficult, to say the least. If you're trying to sell a frozen pizza on Amazon, then you're going to have to swallow a big delivery charge. The frozen shipping is really quite expensive. So essentially, in the first couple of years, we were basically sort of building the brand through social, Facebook, Google, driving awareness. Then we started sort of doing food trucks going across the country, doing sampling and a range of things, lots of very sort of standard awareness tactics, a lot of very standard sort of, getting a bit of pizza in someone's mouth kind of tactic. Then I had the sort of, I love data, and I got a bit of revelatory data come to me in early 2019. We were talking to some of our partners, and I think one conversation we had was with Instacart, who then friends turned around to me in 2019 and said, "Oh, you do realize that $3 million worth of your retail sales are going online at the moment?" And I sort of stopped for a moment and thought, well, I knew that was happening. I was so busy building a brand over here. I wasn't looking at the bottom end of the funnel and how consumers were buying us, and sort of assumed that people wouldn't be buying us online. But obviously they can, because they can buy them through the e-commerce infrastructure of our retail partners, and through the apps of our retail partners and others. So I took a really close look at that. And I Googled on Walmart.com and a couple of the other .coms. I Googled Caulipower, and it came up with a spelling error. And it said, "Would you like some cauliflower florets?" And I thought, well, that's not very good. That's not a good consumer journey experience. So we basically audited all of the online retailer.com websites to try and find out what the CX was really for any consumer trying to buy our products or find our products or even find the category that we're in. And we discovered it was a bit of a mess. We're a startup. We hadn't looked at that kind of stuff. So we looked at how we showed up in terms of pictures, videos, product descriptions, just tidied the whole thing up. And then that opened up the world of, sponsored products and digital. We got a digital game because we basically cleared out the pipes between our consumers and the retail purchase, the online retail purchase experience. So we do have that game now. And the other game that I'm moving us into now is, you'd say, well, if we're not D2C, we won't actually have any first-party data, but other people do have first-party data. So at the moment, in the last year, we've been doing a lot of experiments with other people's first-party data to try and sort of do some more, to try and find workarounds for the fact that we're not D2C.
Like retail partners' data, like some of their data?
No, you got lots of people have got the data. Credit card companies have got data, Numerator has data, retailers have data. What I'm trying to do is plug a lot of the digital dead ends that I think exist for a frozen product like us. I would love to be just promoting a protein bar online. Then I would just take millions of dollars of trade and other money, give it to Amazon, Google, and Facebook, and go and sit on the beach and wait for the sales to roll in.
Well, is there? I think Stephanie had talked a little bit about this too with the founder of Caulipower. Is there play in the not too distant future for just directly ordering? Not going through a retail partner?
If you look at our product portfolio, it's entirely frozen at the moment. But it wouldn't take any marketer to it doesn't take a genius to work out that actually there are other temperature states that are available to us. If I'm a marketeer, am I sort of looking at our innovation and saying, well, actually, it'd be quite handy to have a shelf stable product, because then I can bring a lot more people to the brand a lot more quickly, a lot more cheaply, and all the treasures of the digital marketing cavern are open to me to use.
So let's take a step back to the beginning of you from the outside looking into the Caulipower opportunity. If anyone has the opportunity to check out Stuart Smith's background, you'll see the places that he's worked, the things he's done. It's just absolutely incredible. What was kind of going in around your thoughts at the time before you joined Caulipower? What was the stage of the business? What did you see at that point where you were like, okay, this is the ship I'm jumping on next?
Well, I have to make a small confession, which is that actually the founder that you keep mentioning, Gail Becker, is actually my wife. So,
okay. I did not know that. All right,
you did not know that, and I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if you knew that, but
this is great.
So the backstory is interesting. I've been extremely privileged to work at a number of big agencies, whether they're sort of independents or a number of WPP agencies, as you know. My last few years was at Ogilvy, where, I've worked with, some incredible marketeers, some great strategists, some amazing marketing technologists. They call Ogilvy a teaching hospital. I learned a huge amount in my 10 years there, way beyond what I knew coming into Ogilvy and WPP. And I've worked with some of the most amazing marketeers at Unilever, Microsoft, Intel, P&G. So I've been enormously lucky over my career. And it got me to a point where, I'd been running that division of Ogilvy for, I think, 4 or 5 years globally. And Gail had set up Caulipower in 2017, 2016. The company was basically experiencing hypergrowth, and she was looking for a CMO. So around about Thanksgiving, she turned around to me and said, you know what? Why am I looking for a CMO when I've got one sitting around the Thanksgiving table? Would you like to do it? And the thing that people don't know is that we got married when I moved to New York to work for Ogilvy in 2015, but we didn't actually live together. She was living and working in LA. I was living and working in New York. So we hadn't actually lived together. So I said, so the benefit is on a Friday, I moved to live with my wife for the first time, 4 years after we got married. And then on the Monday, I started working for her. And then obviously the pandemic happened, and we've been in the same house house for the last 725 days, and we're still happily married.
That is the most important thing, I think.
The thing that she really hired me to do was to sort of take a marketing team that was very, very small with a very, very outsourced base to a number of agencies and just say, look, we have to scale this team. We have to have a world-class team building a brand really, really quickly. Would you come and try and help us go through the stages of a large CPG company, but do it in really quick time? And so my job has been to sort of in-source, build the strategy. My marketing title is not sort of head of marketing communications. What I love about the job and what really attracted me to this job was it's, I've got innovation in marketing, new product development, customer experience, everything. I'm not the head of marketing communications. I've got growth in my title. So it gives me a chance to stick my nose into everything in the company. Anything that's dragging and holding our growth back or, anything that could accelerate our growth, I can sort of tinker with.
What are some of the things you did first, 90 days to accelerate growth in terms of build a high performing team?
It's going to sound like marketing 101. It's like, what are we spending our money on? To what effect? What are we actually trying to do? What is the job that marketing has to do? And I think that in the first 2 years, the job of the brand had been, the job of the marketing team was to build a brand and generate excitement and get lots of excitement online with influencers and celebs and lots of good PR and a whole range of things. I think the thing that I realized as I joined was that we needed to sort of rebalance that so that we were still generating buzz for the brand, still generating influence for the brand. We needed to move towards a more sort of data-driven performance marketing approach. We had to support sales. We had to look at velocity. We had to look at a whole range of sort of aspects of marketing to make sure that we were focused on, making our new product launches successful, building loyalty, generating, deeper household penetration, and just basically bring a bit of science to the marketing that we were doing. As you know, I'm a scientist, ex-scientist, so I like data and I like structure and I like a strategy that's really clear and has got a single-minded approach.
Is it a PhD in physical science from Oxford?
That's right, yeah. Basically, chemistry is the easiest way to describe it. I was trying to work out why the ozone hole existed.
So then since you said that, where is this intersection now of marketing and advertising?
The thing that I've always talked about, and particularly in my time at WPP, was the fact that I felt that, building brands in an earned first way was a very clever way to do things. Why wouldn't you have ideas for a brand that would earn attention, earn influence, and earn media? I always sort of saw the sort of separation between sort of PR communications as marketing as being rather artificial. And the trouble is that the spend on things like PR were very, very small, but the power of PR to change a brand's trajectory was underestimated by marketing. But the PR industry found it very difficult to persuade marketing that it had good ideas that could help build a brand at scale. I think what I was able to do, particularly at Ogilvy, was work with creatives to generate ideas for a brand that earned media. And why wouldn't you want to earn media rather than pay for it? If an idea has got legs in the newspapers and with influencers, why wouldn't you have an idea for the brand rather than one that you have to just pay to force people to consume?
What is the stage of Caulipower right now in terms of a company?
Well, the business is way over 100 million now, which is great after just 5 years really in market. I think the sky's the limit in the sense that the kind of consumer love that we've generated and the kind of opportunities we've got to move into different day parts, different meal occasions, different temperature states. There's absolutely no reason why the company couldn't double or triple in size over the next few years.
So are there several moments in the day when you and Gail just stop and start dancing around the house because the world is changing and is evolving, and then Caulipower is a big part of that change. I could just imagine there'd be a lot of celebratory high fives and toasts and things like that.
It's fabulous. One of the things that I miss about being in our office in LA is that Gail installed a big brass bell. And so, whenever there was a new retailer authorization or an influencer tweeted about us, she would come out of her office and sort of ring the bell and sort of everyone would get round and there would be sort of general fun and jollity and probably drinks after work as well. Those days I miss. I think, that's one of the things that working remotely has reduced our ability to celebrate like that in a very human way, unfortunately.
And have you guys done anything different or unique or tested, tried things to keep that connection, that tightness together?
For me, as a sort of a marketing leader, I was obviously already used to working across time zones using technology. It's the only way. So for me, that sort of transition was not difficult. I think the thing that was difficult, even for me, was the sheer sort of scale of doing everything online all the time, every day, and having very, very little in-person experience. One of the things that we've tried to do is just be more mindful of people's personal situations. A couple at home with two young kids in a 1,000-square-foot apartment, or whether someone's just moved cities and is on their own in their bed sit somewhere. Just trying to understand people's personal context has become more important. And I've tried, and I think we've all tried, to be more mindful of people's personal circumstances. It's tricky because you don't want to sort of be nosy or pry too much, but understanding people's personal context is super important in this really intense online way that we're working. We're lucky in the sense that we've technically an exempt business during the pandemic, so we didn't have to, we could still get together, and a few of us did get together now and again during the lulls in the waves of the pandemic, when people were happy to get together, and we'd been vaccinated and stuff like that. We did get together outside or indoors at certain moments. So it's not that we haven't been together, but I don't think we found any magic answers. We've just had to sort of figure it out and try and help us all get through with good mental health.
Yeah, that's the general, I think, consensus I'm finding as well. Over the years, with your, again, experience working with some amazing brands, some amazing marketers, I'm sure you've developed a relationship with velocity and growth, and also a relationship with failure, and kind of how you view those things. And would love to hear your thoughts on each of those. Let's take the first one. What is your relationship with just velocity and growth now?
Everything's, again, situational. It's all contextual, isn't it? I think the job of helping a company like P&G, generate growth is very different to the kind of job that you need to do for Caulipower. I think the thing that I've always tried to hold at the center of all my thoughts around the idea of growth and velocity is that there needs to be some sort of structure. There needs to be some maths within the strategy. A company like Caulipower grows very quickly through distribution in the first 2 or 3 years. Once the giddy, heady days of distribution growth start to sort of slow down, what matters is whether the consumer continues to love you, continues to buy you, and continues to buy you more frequently. The relationship, it flips with growth very quickly from, gaining distribution to maintaining consumer love and loyalty. So we've had to do that very quickly. We've had to do that for pizza. For some of our newer products, we're still in the giddy days of sort of extra distribution growth. So part of what I've done is try to sort of bring some demand generation discipline, so that sales and marketing are working very, very closely together to plan trade and to plan campaign events and to do everything that is designed to, acquire consumers intelligently. Who is the cheapest consumer to acquire? What is their behavior once we acquire them using that particular sort of consumer acquisition route? What is their behavior afterwards? If it costs me $10 to acquire a consumer and she buys once, or it costs me $500 to acquire a consumer and that person buys us 5 times a month for the rest of their lives, that relationship between sort of consumer loyalty, consumer acquisition, and lifetime value, that's part of what I've had to install into the company, because a company like P&G or Unilever, they have all this stuff. They have their spreadsheets, they have their data. It doesn't exist, and you don't need it until you get to a certain point in your growth. So for me, it's all about just the math of how you generate demand and how you generate velocity for a retailer, if that's what you were driving at.
Is there a favorite failure that you have that maybe at the time looked like a bleak thing, or maybe it didn't turn out so well, but there was a great lesson you learned from that?
Yes. I mean, my failure and I are good friends, but I swipe left very quickly and sort of move on if I possibly can. It's like they do say that failure is, you don't learn anything unless you fail. It's absolutely true. And I have failed many times. The trick, I suppose, is to try and fail quickly, whether it's a new product, you can't cling on to things that are not working. You have to embrace failure and move on. I do have a very personal story, which is a Brit is just absolutely horrifying and still makes my hands sweat whenever I think about it. This was in Europe, not in the US, so no one can try and work out who this is. But I built a charity partnership in my late 20s, years and years and years ago. And you give a lot of money to a charity, and you sort of want to build a great partnership that sort of has a lot of economic and environmental and social impact. It's a lovely thing that you want to do. But the trouble with working with charities is they come in sort of 2 or 3 different flavors. Sometimes they have fantastic staff who really understand how to work with a brand, and sometimes they're lovely people doing great work, but they just don't have the quality of the people to engage with the amount of money or the ambition of the project. I unfortunately ended up with a great charity partner with a fairly sort of amateurish outfit that I was trying to sort of help do better. So I rang up one day to speak to the CEO of the charity, and I spoke to a woman on the phone first, and I said, "Oh, hi," thinking that this was the CEO's PA, who I had a good relationship with. And I started talking to the PA, and I said, "Look, I'm really sorry, but this other person, just isn't up to scratch, and it's a bit terrible, and I really need to speak to the CEO and explain this, and we're going to have to make a switch." And then she said, "It's me." I'm the person. I wasn't speaking to the CEO's PA. I was speaking to the woman who I was complaining about. And I have to say, you do that once in your life, and you do that once only. I mean, that's not quite the failure you're looking for, but when I read that question, my mind went back to it's a visceral moment. I still have never got over the embarrassment of that. It still makes me sweat with shame.
Wow, yeah, a lot of key experience in that for sure. As you were sharing, I was like, I could feel that. I'm like, on both sides. I'm like, I can imagine being her. I can imagine being you. What a lesson. Cool. Let's get into kind of some current events that we found. I think you saw maybe we posted a few articles on the prep doc. And before we dive in, I just want to mention to anyone listening, first of all, thanks for listening. Second of all, this entire show is sponsored by Salesforce. And so when you think of brands engaging with marketing and engagement, salesforce.com/marketing, there's a ton of resources and tools there. Check it out. So thank you, Salesforce. The first article I want to talk about, Stuart, it's around Applebee's. Applebee's pulled an ad from CNN after this kind of ill-timed commercial during the Russia-Ukraine coverage. When the Russians invaded Ukraine, CNN was trying to keep the breaking news going. It ended up going from air sirens and footage of Ukraine to a picture of an ad like from an upbeat Applebee's commercial. I know that there's no way that Applebee's could have known that would happen, but what are your initial thoughts on that?
It is interesting. I mean, in general, my first thought is obviously it was a terrible thing to happen. I mean, it shouldn't have happened. First of all, it's just awful. The thing that really came to mind is the fact that just because something is technically possible doesn't mean that we should do it. And the trouble is at the moment, we've got, publishers and media companies wanting to, generate revenue and therefore have advertising. We've got brands that want to take advantage of that advertising. And there's lots of clever things that we can do, to pull in ads when certain people are watching stuff on connected TV. You can show your ads to the right people. There's a lot of wonderful digital technology available now. First party data serving of ads to people watching Hulu or whatever. What I don't understand is if I can now find out almost the inside leg measurement of someone who bought one of my pizzas in Idaho, why the publishers have not worked more closely with brands to make this kind of thing impossible to happen. We have contextually aware computing. Why haven't we got contextually aware advertising? And why is this still allowed to happen? At the moment, it's still a bit of a Wild West. I'm sure that there is a technical solution to make sure that brands don't end up in this situation. And I'm sure publishers don't want it to happen. I think, we just need to put a bunch of techies in a room and say, this needs to be fixed. It can be fixed. So fix it.
Do you think that CNN should be held responsible for trying to advertise that style during a crisis? I can't imagine any brand being happy with that spot.
Well, the trouble is, it's sort of, you could ascribe sort of blame to people, but I think actually this is more about the fact that, two parts of a large organization are not really thinking in sync. I'm sure editorial doesn't speak to sales. Sales is not talking to advertising. No one is thinking through this. What I'd hope, though, this is forcing the different bits of CNN and some of the really big brand advertisers to get in the room and say, how do we fix this? There must be some technical solutions.
I like that. Okay. Next article is around these are the pandemic business trends that are here to stay. In a 2020 study, 74% of B2B marketers said that influencer marketing improved their customer experience. Do you think more brands should be investing in influencer marketing? If so, how? Any thoughts on that?
Love influencer marketing. I mean, we built our brand using influencer marketing, whether those are sort of, celeb influencers that we've had paid partnerships with, like Dan Levy, or whether they're sort of it's free influencer stuff that we've had from celebs who posted about us, and or maybe the sort of the micro influencer programs that we do to build the Caulipower brand. But I'm old enough to sort of go back to when the web became social and people started, ordinary people could start creating content and publishing it and doing whatever they wanted with it. And I loved that period, that wild west of the internet. And then sort of people started to monetize it, and then as people started to monetize it, brands started to work out that they could do things with it. And suddenly there was a sort of an elite of people who were creators who were sucking in lots of eyeballs, and brands were obviously sort of coming in and purchasing that. What I think I've learned over the last few years is that a brand has to be super careful to understand what role an influencer plays in what they're doing to build the brand. You may be buying eyeballs, but are you buying eyeballs that really matter? Are you buying influential eyeballs? Are the influencers actually influential? Do the eyeballs they bring in secondary, tertiary, other eyeballs, or are they just eyeballs? And are those eyeballs, do they really care about the brand partnership? So I do like influencer marketing. I do think that people have to be careful, what they do, where they do, and make sure it's actually adding the value that they think that it's going to add.
I think that's important. I was listening to a roundtable of CMOs of Anheuser-Busch and a bunch of brands that were all talking about Super Bowl spots and certain ads that they saw during there. And one gentleman was sharing about this idea of just like giving a celebrity a bag of money, to be an influencer, how brands need to be really careful there, and thinking about some brands that, like Anheuser-Busch has the Clydesdale, right? Coke has the polar bear, and how these brands kind of are creating these personas, many of them, Geico and, Progressive, etc. And he was kind of, presenting the point of creating and developing something along those lines versus just, okay, let's just find someone with a bunch of followers and say, here's a bunch of money, please, tweet and share about it. And I think, to your point, there's a strategic way to do it.
Yeah, they need to have an affinity with the brand, and it needs to be more than just some cameo appearance, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, next article and last article, title is Flip That Phone Around. The future of social is vertical. There was an interesting article in The Drum that talked about how video marketing today has drastically changed. They're saying that marketing videos should feel more raw and authentic and less polished and perfected. What are your initial thoughts on this shift?
The thesis is interesting, but I think it's a bit of a false choice. If the content works, that's all that really matters, in my view. If the content works, then it has to work. I think what's really interesting about content, though, is that consumers, through their role as creators, are actually influencing content fashion as in real time. If you look at TikTok, if you look at the way that sort of TikTok has grown and how consumers are using TikTok and influencers are using TikTok, brands are now in a very reactionary mode. They've got to create content that actually people want to consume, not just because TikTok's a particular sort of platform, but also because it's a change it's an explosion in humor and just really clever, funny, engaging content that consumers are making, and brands are now in a situation where they've got to lean into that fashion. So it's not so much that people need to make ads in messy apartments. It's about what's being made in that messy apartment. But on the other hand, I still want the heroic sort of 30-second spot that generates a tear in my eye, that really shows me what a brand believes in and what a brand stands for. And I think different types of content, they have genuinely different roles. We've had some superbly interesting TikTok content, but our most successful, very first TikTok that we ever did was actually done by our poor receptionist who was sitting alone in the office during the pandemic and decided one day just to do one, and it was absolutely superb. It wasn't part of our content strategy. It wasn't something that had been discussed in an editorial meeting, but our receptionist just got up, did a TikTok, and it was brilliant. And actually she was the one that pushed us into this world of TikTok. And now Gail, our founder, has done a whole bunch and stuff like that. So I think it's not about, I think it's about whether the content works, but I think it's mostly about the fact that advertisers need to follow content fashion that is being driven by consumers now rather than ad agencies.
I love that. I earlier this week, I was interviewing the former CMO of Chick-fil-A, Steve Robinson, amazing guy. And he talked about in the early days of Chick-fil-A, how they looked at all the other fast food chains and they said, okay, we're going to do 180 degrees of what they're doing, right? We're not going to show pictures of food and prices and do those things. And I'm curious if a page of that has been taken in the Caulipower approach, in terms of, you look at all these other cool, fast growth D2C, CPG brands, maybe even the same category, maybe not. But as you look at the landscape, are there things that you've distinctively done that are just like, on paper, people would have been like, why didn't they do that? Everybody else does that in the DTC, CPG world. Or are you following the playbook? Or are you kind of saying, no, we want people to engage with our brand differently? Or is that, more of a trap to put yourself in? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think for us as a relatively new brand to some of the others you've mentioned, I think that we've had a job to educate people about who we are, why we are different. The fact that we are a better for you, veggie forward, cauliflower crust pizza, that our chicken tenders are the lowest calorie ones on the market, and they're coated in vegetables. They're not fried, they're air fried. We've had a lot of sort of infomercials to do. And I have to say, just as a marketer and just because I like creativity, I started to get a bit bored with our own content in some respects, because it was like there was so much infomercial stuff because we had to. And I sort of pulled it back and said, look, I know we have to do this stuff. We've got to educate people on why our Better For You pizza is better than any other Better For You pizza, and how ours tastes better and why, and the fact that we have this amazing stone fire crust. And I know we have to do all that, but we know exactly who our consumer is, Sam, deliberately ungendered word, and we want them to be entertained. We need to entertain them. We need to find, be interesting. So we did during the pandemic. We definitely pulled back on all the infomercials, tried to entertain Sam, our consumer, tried to be a little bit funny and engaging. If they were going to spend 30 seconds with us, I wanted it to be fun and enjoyable. It's why we ended up doing the thing with Dan Levy. We were lucky enough to partner with him just as Schitt's Creek was sort of coming to its zenith, which was, just a bit of luck, really. I think I'm answering the question, but I think it's about trying to be entertaining. And I think if you look in our space, frozen entrees, frozen pizza, frozen pasta, all that stuff, I'm hoping that if you looked at the content side by side, I think you'd find us informative, engaging, and hopefully entertaining.
Is there a channel or a path that you're doubling down more on this year that you maybe didn't in the last couple of years in terms of just sharing content or on social? Is there areas you're kind of testing or getting more involved in?
You're right. I mean, part of, as a new brand, the great thing you get to do is to experiment and sort of do some betas and try and work out what works and then scale that the next year. Some of the stuff that we've done this year has been quite interesting, trying to stitch together different marketing technology solutions to try and get around this problem that we're not D2C. I can do advertising and I can do coupons, but can I connect the two in some way? And can I connect the two in some way and use someone else's first party data to move us to be a more precision performance marketing led organization? So at the moment, essentially, I'm trying to sort of construct for a frozen brand the kind of performance marketing engine that you would take for granted if you're a D2C brand. And I'm doing that with the help of some really great companies and partners like Numerator and WPP and Catalina and iBotter. These are companies that want to experiment, are interested in helping a small brand sort of break some of the rules and try and create some new solutions.
That's great. I love that. Thoughts on the NFT and the metaverse? Like, can NFTs and the metaverse be strategic for brands? I mean, some are saying that even providing profitable new business models and revenue streams.
It's strange. I mean, God, I hate to date myself, although I think my grey beard probably already does that. But I do remember Second Life. And I remember everyone getting really excited about Second Life. And then one day, and if I'd really listened to my younger self, if I could just go back and do this, what I remember saying to someone, I said, "This is incredible. Do you realize that someone has just sold a virtual T-shirt to a virtual avatar in a virtual world?" And this is like, I don't know, was it 2007, 6? I can't remember how long ago it was. It was about 15 years ago. If I'd understood the enormity of what I'd just said on that day, and I remember, I'm not boasting, I genuinely said that to someone. I said, "This is huge. This is absolutely massive." And then I just went off and just carried on doing my marketing job. And I didn't go and get venture capital for the idea that was clearly staring me in the face, which was called the metaverse. So I do hope that whatever metaverse with a small m, maybe not Zuckerberg's capital M, but there is a future in it if people can get over the motion sickness. I do think it's the ambition that people are laying out for it is big and interesting, and we need these huge goals for if anything is going to be made. People have to have a big vision for it. I think it will take a long time to backfill. It'll take a long time to create these virtual worlds where any kind of commerce can happen. It's just going to take time for everything to catch up, and but it may not even be for me or our brand. Who knows? It's going to take a while.
Yeah, I agree. We're talking to a lot of brands about this, all shapes and sizes, throughout the Fortune 100 and 500 and beyond. And it's interesting. A lot of them, I would say most of them that I connect with they're sitting at the table, they're talking about it. But to your point, there's some maturity still happening in the industry. And I think that a lot of people are kind of waiting and seeing. Some industries like gaming and others have already been playing in that world. So it's a little bit different. But when you start looking at the B2B world or some of these interesting kind of fast growth CPG brands, like how could you play in that? It's interesting to see, but I think I'm with you and I'm kind of waiting and seeing how we can play.
The irony is that the pandemic might accelerate the acceptability to B2B audiences. The fact that we've had to live in this virtual world, which is essentially a two-dimensional world for the whole time, it may just do a little bit of behind-the-scenes rewiring of people's expectations and acceptability of that kind of environment.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to make sure we cover?
I just think the excitement of having spent 30 years in marketing at places like WPP, the most exciting thing for me that's really happened coming to Caulipower is to actually sort of almost create a marketing team from scratch. I think one of the things it's taught me is that you sit in sort of on the agency side, sort of saying words like personalization at scale and first party data and marketing technology, and then you realize when you're sitting as the CMO in a young company, very open to buying those types of solutions, that actually the marketing industry is still figuring stuff out. The data ecosystem is still not complete. There are marketing technologies that have companies that have part of the marketing technology solution, but they're not always joined up. And I've found myself in a situation where working for this small but fast-growing company called Caulipower, even for a Unilever or a P&G, saying, well, why can't you take this data and do this, and then I can do that, and then this, and you sort of find people at these companies that shall remain nameless saying, oh, that's interesting, we should do that. I think there's a lot of exciting times ahead for marketing. I think marketing technology still has a lot of a way to go to develop, to create the kind of ROI and also, frankly, just to be easy to use.
I love it. There's so many, Stuart, you had so many mic drop moments in this conversation. I wish I had a mic drop button. I just would push it. It would say mic drop. Just really great perspective. And, honestly, I mean, you did not disappoint. I knew that having someone of your caliber to be able to share perspective and, of course, be inside of the rocket ship that is Caulipower was awesome. So thank you for being here. Lightning round, here we go. We have Stuart Smith, Caulipower, head of marketing, global genius, innovator in the house. First question, Stuart, texting or talking?
Talking, always.
Okay. What is one thing you love and appreciate about yourself?
Being a dad, super privilege.
I share that with you, my friend. What's your favorite day of the week?
Saturday, especially when there's English Premiership rugby, followed by English Premiership soccer, followed by probably college NFL or NFL.
Okay. Oh, I love it. Okay. What is your favorite city in the US besides the one you live in?
Oh, it has to be New York. I lived there for 4 years before I came to LA.
This might be the most important question. One of the most important questions. Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to talk to animals?
Oh, talk to animals. They can teach us a few things about the planet.
Indeed. What's your favorite holiday?
Oh, a long one. A proper 2-week European holiday. None of these short American ones.
Oh, I love it. Scale of 1 to 10, how good of a driver are you?
I would let Gail, my wife, decide that. But actually, I'm probably an 8 or a 9, given that I can drive stick shift on the left or right.
Ah, that is a skill. Okay. Please fill in the blank. Something wise my elders taught me was...
work to live, don't live to work.
Would you choose invisibility or super strength?
Oh, invisibility. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Is it wrong for a vegetarian to eat animal crackers?
Absolutely. Even food, even with a fake face, has got to be wrong.
Okay. If you weren't in marketing leadership and advertising and all of the amazing things you do, what would you be doing? I would probably be making things. I'd be an artist in a little colony by a beach somewhere, probably Laguna. Okay. What is one of your least favorite marketing buzzwords?
Digital. It's meaningless.
Digital. Okay. Last question. What would you go back and whisper in the ear of your younger self about being a leader?
Well, I mean, apart from sort of buying Bitcoin.
I'm with you there.
Listen a little bit more, talk a little bit less. We were given 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in those proportions.
Well said. Fantastic. Thanks again to Salesforce for making this show possible. To learn more, head over to salesforce.com/marketing.